says the House will meet on Wednesday morning to discuss articles of impeachment. I mean, a lot can happen in a couple of days' time. What does that mean for the timeline, especially since inauguration is just 9 days away? I feel like we got to get this immediately. It's an emergency.
Zerlina, I agree with you. I thought we should have convened over the weekend, voted for impeachment, gotten it to McConnell's desk. I'm glad we're finally going to vote on Wednesday. We should send it immediately to McConnell. Put the pressure on him to do the right thing. There are a lot of Republicans who believe that Trump incited violence, having a mob attack the Capitol. Even people who agreed with his 4 years, which I vehemently disagreed with. But those who agreed with his tax cuts, who agreed with American First policy, they don't support him calling for an attack on the Capitol. So this is the time to impeach him.
I imagine their opinions may have changed when they were victims of the incitement at the Capitol. If you're a victim of the riot that has been incited by the president, it might have the ability to change your opinion on whether or not impeachment is warranted. But I feel like the timing of this is also tricky, right? You have 9 days until inauguration. You have the incoming president, Joe Biden, coming in, and he needs to get his cabinet picks confirmed. How much do you think this impeachment situation that unfolded because the president incited a riot will hamper Biden's ability to get those cabinet appointments confirmed and to get his agenda rolling?
Well, first of all, Zerlina, you're absolutely right. If there's one thing that can unify Congress, it's attacking Congress. And so members, Republicans were attacked. I mean, the rioters were chanting slurs against Vice President Pence. They were calling for violence against Republican lawmakers. I believe we can do this. The trial is 3 days. That's what it was under President Clinton. That's what it was under the first impeachment trial. So this is not going to, in my view, hurt Biden's agenda, even if it has to take place in the first few days. A 3-day trial is swift. And then we get to all of the other things. And the parliamentarian is looking at whether we can even move those things simultaneously. But there has to be accountability. You can't have a president call for attacking their own institutions of government and not have a response.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Silicon Valley is in your district. And after Twitter and Facebook banned the president, and as I joked earlier, he's also banned on Pinterest, which is my favorite part, their stocks actually slid. Do you think this could be part of the reason they waited so long to ban him? It's not clear that the tweets that they banned him for are more egregious than previous ones, but obviously this particular week was the one where he incited a riot.
Well, I'm sure it's politically easier to ban him now that he's a former president and now that he's lost political support. But their rationale, even if late, is correct, and that is that there should be no incitement of violence on these platforms. This is not saying you can't have conservative speech. This is not saying that you can't have conspiracy theories, even as free speech. What it's saying is you can't incite violence. So to be consistent, I and my team look up. I said, let's see which other world leaders are actually inciting violence on this platform. It turns out Khamenei, yes, you can argue, arguably has. We're having trouble finding other examples of world leaders that are inciting violence. Anyone who is inciting violence should be banned, but there are not that many who are actually using these platforms to incite violence.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of it that way, right? I mean, you don't see Justin Trudeau tweeting threats at his, parliament. I think that we are so far beyond normalcy that sometimes it's even hard to see it. Parler, which is one of the alternative social media platforms that has drawn conservatives and far-right extremists and white nationalists, has also been banned from key platforms like Apple, Google, and Amazon, basically making it almost impossible to get here. Do you think that's enough to tamp down on possible insurrectionists by just taking away their main platform?
I think it's a step. I mean, my guess is that they're going to find another web hosting service. But again, here, there's a simple principle. When they are hosting speech that is calling for assassination, that's calling for the plotting of violence, that is not protected under the First Amendment. And Apple and Google, as well as Amazon, have repeatedly said to Parler, moderate this speech, take it off, have some enforcement standards. And I'm glad that they finally held up their terms of service. I think we need legal reform where you can get a court order and require require social media companies to remove speech that is a blatant threat or a blatant incitement of violence. I think that would go a long way to helping mitigate some of these plots.
And I think, the line is particularly clear, especially in these examples. One of the arguments, though, is that, this is a violation of the First Amendment and free speech. Explain why that's really wrong.
Well, they should read the First Amendment jurisprudence, Brandenburg, which is one of the most brilliant cases, actually a 9-0 decision. Even the Roberts Court would agree with it. It says, yes, we protect speech, but we don't protect speech when it's incitement of imminent violence. We don't protect speech when it's an incitement of illegal conduct. The hard cases, Zerlina, are the conspiracy theories or spreading false information. And there you can say, well, who's an arbiter of truth? But I think it's a pretty simple case that you shouldn't use speech to incite violence against fellow Americans. And so that, to me, is the easy call. And here you have platforms that are doing that.